What do you think is a major reason that parents are so stressed in this generation?
They're putting them in 4 classes in a day, 3 classes in a day. The problem is not that we want children to be high achievers. The problem is that when a child is not a high achiever, then what?
Right from the time the baby is born up until the age of 9 or 10, how does the brain development happen?
So the brain development starts as soon as the baby is out.
When the child transitions from being a child, that adolescence age, what do parents do?
If you have been using harsh techniques to parent your child, this is the time when it'll backfire. When I became a parent, I realized, oh my god, this is not easy. Oh my god, it's so easy to say be calm, but when you're in that situation, it takes a lot.
Yeah.
How much screen will my child be watching now? How much junk food will my child be having? There was a time when a child is in the room, they're safe. Now a child in the room with a phone is actually unsafe. There's a lot that is not in our control anymore, Gayatri.
The kind of relationship that we saw our parents have, will that affect what we consider to be love once we grow up?
Oh, yes. And they will not even realize that they are being abused. So that's why we call it generational trauma.
So when parents are constantly fighting and arguing, how does it affect the child?
A lot of times children blame themselves, then there will be a disconnection, and that's when children will stop listening to us.
It actually takes a village to raise a child.
Where is the village?
Exactly. What, according to you, are the things that a parent should never tell their children?
That you're not good enough. I will really suggest don't give silent treatments to children. That really makes them a people pleaser.
In 2025, how do we raise confident children? Every client that I meet, right, when they have a challenge and when they come to me, I have typically noticed that more than 95% of the clients have the issues that they have right now because of something that happened to them before the age of 7. So, how do we raise in 2025? How do we raise confident children?
So raising confidence actually starts from home.
Okay.
How parents are dealing with their children, because before the age of 7, children are mostly with their parents, especially before going to school. Even when they go to school, the hours are very less. Children are around parents. Raising confident children means how you're talking to children,
Right.
the conversations that you're having with children, the emotional connection, being present with them, tuning in with them, making them feel seen, making them feel heard, accepting them for who they are and not trying to make them something.
Yes.
This is the base of raising confident children. Regulating yourself, working on yourself as a parent
Mm.
with your child.
Mm.
So, till now we were thinking that parenting is a top down approach. So, you get a little child and you raise this child and you're going to make them something and you're going to teach them a lot of things. But if you see parenting, it's the time of growth for the parent also.
Yeah.
It's the time to learn from the child also,
Yeah.
to see parts of you that were hidden. It is a spiritual journey also.
Yes.
If you see it like that, you do not even have to take the pressure of raising a confident child, Gayatri.
Correct.
Why do we, the talks about parenting today, I want to highlight one thing. Somewhere it's putting a lot of pressure on parents. You have to raise a confident child, you have to raise children like that. You don't do that. I don't want to put that pressure. I want to take it off.
Mm.
Be a real person.
Mm.
Have a real relationship with your children.
Mm.
Just tune in.
Yeah.
And love yourself.
That's so important. I mean, I resonate a lot with what you're saying because I used to be a major people pleaser while I was growing up. And now looking back and trying to connect the dots, I still remember the instances where the household would actually be a messy household. But when some relative or a family friend used to come, my mother would clean the house spick and span and make it look so good just so that the person who comes in has a different observation about the house. So it started to embed inside of me that if somebody has to like me, I have to be somebody else who I am not. So the inauthenticity of the parent came into the child as being a people pleaser.
That's true.
Right?
Also, we say that, you're a good girl, right? Don't cry. You're a good girl, right? Do this. Okay, say hi to auntie.
Mhm.
See, she'll be happy when you'll say hi.
Yeah.
See, make the teacher happy by scoring well, by getting that star. So all these are also making us people pleaser. I have also grown up to be a people pleaser. I've worked on myself a lot. I remember we would have these slam books in
Mm.
which we would make people write.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of my slam book where I had written, what do I want to be? I want to be liked by everyone.
Wow.
I mean, that was my goal.
Wow.
And that goal was respected, Gayatri. I mean, it was a goal that people would like
Yeah.
that I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had no idea how delusional we were.
Yeah. While growing up, especially that generation, I completely understand. So you're talking something about parents learning to regulate themselves.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
See, Gayatri, regulation means there are lots of emotions that we feel
Mm.
in our day-to-day
Mm.
lives. But whatever we feel, mostly we cannot control it. So if you are experiencing your child having a tantrum, or your child is behaving in a certain way that may trigger you, and you'll feel these emotions of anger. You might feel sometimes sometimes parents are not angry, they get very anxious.
Mm.
They are not able to regulate. That means that whatever they're feeling will come out in their behavior as it is, and that's when they'll shout, they'll get angry, they will behave in a certain way. But when we are feeling these feelings, it is important that we regulate it and we do not let it affect our behavior so much that it overpowers us.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's what regulation is. The thing with children is that children have a prefrontal cortex that is still developing. That means their brain is not equipped to regulate their emotions. So we have the word co-regulation. That means when we regulate ourselves and we give a safe space to our children when they are feeling emotions, that's when they learn to regulate their emotions.
Okay.
Ultimately, we are moving towards being more emotionally intelligent people
Yeah.
when we understand our emotions, when we understand other people's emotions, when we are able to regulate, and that helps us in so many levels in our lives.
Right. Do you also believe, like when we are children, the kind of relationship that we saw our parents have, will that affect what we consider to be love once we grow up?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely, Gayatri. The way you just put it, it was beautiful. See, if a parent, imagine, for example, if a parent loves the child, but then to raise a successful child or to raise a responsible and obedient child, whatever definition that they have, they may just get really angry at the child.
Mm.
They might just even hit the child,
Mm.
slap the child. This is something that is considered good for children in a lot of cultures. When I put my reels on Instagram, people say that, you're raising a generation, you're pampering children. That's why today's generation is like this, because you say don't hit children. And that's why we normalize hitting children, because our intentions are the best.
Mm.
Parents want to hit children because it's good for them.
Right.
That will help them. But the thing is, when they see such a relationship of love, but at the same place where they are finding love, they get scared
Mm.
and they get confused. And that becomes their definition of love. So imagine when they normalize such a relationship in their life,
Mm.
they're going to attract the same kind of relationship in the future,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're going to normalize it.
Yeah.
So when their partner will abuse them emotionally or physically, they're going to say, but he loves me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's how it is, right?
Yeah.
And they will not even realize that they're being abused.
That's actually very true. I mean, now connecting back the dots, I understand where it all came from for me also in my life. So, when parents are constantly fighting and arguing, how does it affect the child?
A lot of times, children blame themselves. A lot of times, they will get very confused. They will sometimes even feel that this is again normal. These are the relationships. When they are going to grow up, it will be very difficult for them to form meaningful relationships because they have seen something like this. They may be scared of getting emotionally attached to people,
Mm.
or they may have the same pattern of getting angry, as because they've seen that in their parents.
Mm.
It takes a lot of toll. There's a lot of trauma. So when I say about trauma, my point is that we talk about trauma in a sense where we talk about like sexual abuse will
Yeah.
cause you trauma, or some natural calamity if you have observed, or you have been in an accident, and these are the things that are trauma. But this is in definition, it's big T trauma.
Mm.
There's a lot of small t trauma that children go through in their lives. One
Okay.
of them that you just said, that when parents are constantly fighting,
Okay.
there's a lot of financial issue that the family is facing, and there's a lot of stress in the family because of that. There's a lot of emotional neglect. The child feels really misunderstood, not understood, labeled. Emotionally, they're not able to connect with the adults in the family. They are being compared constantly, and they're made to feel not like they are not good enough
Right.
constantly. So these are also affecting our children's personality ultimately.
Right.
So we are, because of what our experiences were in our childhood, and
Absolutely.
these small t traumas, they may seem insignificant, but they have a lot of significance in our personalities.
Do you think more of what our parents do with us is connected to how they were dealt with when they were children?
Of course, it's like generational.
Right.
So that's why we call it generational trauma.
Right.
And that's why we say we need to somewhere start breaking these cycles.
Mm.
We can break these cycles.
Mm.
We'll just have to be awoke. We'll have to wake up.
How do we start breaking generational trauma?
By first understanding,
Okay.
by first looking into ourselves instead of blaming, coming out of that victim mentality. It's very easy to say that this is happening to me because of him, or this is happening to me because of him. But when you take a step back and you start taking an inward journey and you start seeing, why am I behaving like this?
Mm.
So the one thing that I really have to work hard when I'm taking personal sessions is taking a parent from a place of, my child is like this, my child is like this, he does this, he does not listen, he's very aggressive, to just in a very subtle way through a conversation taking them to a place where they say, oh yeah, I can now see how it is affecting him.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I was also not able to be calm. So when we are talking to parents, and they'll keep saying that, then this happened, and I have to again and again say, then what did you do?
Mm.
And then how did you react? And then what did you say? And when I ask these questions, they're like, they don't even know it's important.
Yeah.
And they'll take a minute, and sometimes they'll just take a pause, because I can see them processing it. I can see them going, yeah, and they are very uncomfortable because they themselves then can see the errors that they may be
Yes.
making.
Yes.
That's the first step, just seeing yourself.
So, what is the common problem that parents come to you with?
Common problem, most common, child is not listening, they're being aggressive,
Okay.
they are so mostly, Gayatri, parents are, they will not be able to see that the child is going through an emotional, suffering, I will call, till the time it's not very evident and it's not being an inconvenience for them.
Mm.
So my point is
Mm.
that why will parents come to me? Because suddenly the child is not performing academically,
Okay.
or the child has become completely aggressive.
Okay.
Now, these are the things, now they are symptoms. They can now see it. But
Okay.
what's under the behavior? If the child will not show these symptoms, they will not be able to see. And before these symptoms come, the child is already suffering.
Okay.
They just can't see it.
Okay.
Suffering in the sense they're going through something.
Something.
They're asking to be seen. They're asking for help in their own ways.
Okay.
So I feel that children being aggressive, their academic performance going low, or they're completely not listening, shutting you out, all these are very important to happen in the family, because that's what will make the parent pay attention to the child, that, hey, there's something not right, I need to seek help.
Okay. What do you think are the major reasons that children don't listen to us?
One major reason, disconnection.
Okay.
That's the major reason.
Okay.
The reasons under it can be many.
Okay.
Basically, the child will listen to you till the time they feel connected to you, and vice versa.
Mm.
So if you feel that your child is consistently not listening to you, you're not able to get through to your child, you have to get angry at everything, that means your child is really feeling disconnected with you.
Mm.
That means what? To put it practically, how this disconnection you can see in the relationship of a parent and child is, the parent is consistently not able to emotionally regulate. That means they get angry a lot,
Mm.
or they get anxious a lot.
Mm.
You to connect with children, you need to work on being calmer,
Okay.
being centered.
Okay.
The second thing can be the child is feeling disrespected in the way we talk.
Okay.
So sometimes we don't even realize, because we love our children so much. we don't realize that we are not being respectful or we are disconnected.
Okay.
I'll ask any parent, indirectly, if I'll ask them that, are you connected with your child? Which parent will say I'm not?
Yeah.
Most parents will say, of course,
Yeah.
because they love their children.
Right.
But connection is very different from love. Love may exist while there is a disconnection in the relationship, in the form of the child again feeling disrespected because the parents' tone, the way the parent says, that do this beta, why are you not listening, theek se likho, write properly. And or sometimes, you're just talking to the child that, look at the way this just happened, and you get a call and you'll be like, yeah, hello, yes. The tone, the change, or someone will just come. They can see, they can feel that they are not maybe important enough to be talked in a respectful way.
Okay.
And that's how. Or you're not connecting with your child emotionally, in the sense you give a lot of instructions, you correct them a lot, so your intentions are pure. If I'll ask parents not to correct, they ask me, then how will we raise a good child?
Yeah.
But you're doing it too much and you're not understanding the child enough.
Mm.
You're explaining and lecturing more than understanding the child. So, I always say this, that when you explain children, that means you're telling them, you understand, beta. You understand this, I'm telling you. But when you empathize with children, you're saying that I understand you.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a lot of difference in
Yes.
that. So
Yes.
maybe lack of empathy, the child is not feeling understood. That's what my point is. That could lead to disconnection. Um, they are not spending enough time. Basically, all in all, we are parenting children a lot. So we want to raise a good child,
Right.
and academically, behavior wise, health wise, we take responsibility as a parent. But we are not paying enough weightage to emotional connection with the child.
Mm.
So that's the relationship part. So while parenting the child, it's very important to focus on the relationship. When you're not doing that enough, then there will be a disconnection, and that's when children will stop listening to us.
Okay. And you also beautifully speak a lot about less parenting, right? What is less parenting?
So sometimes I feel we are overdoing things. Overdoing in the sense that, like, again, correcting too much, instructing too much, trying to, again, in today's times, because we just have one child, two children, three is also a number that I'm seeing very less, at least in our culture. So, because we have so much time, so we are overdoing things, in the sense we'll put them into too many classes.
Yes.
We will want to, I don't know, we just want them to thrive in all areas. So sometimes I feel that is putting a lot of pressure on children. So less parenting, in the sense, see your child bloom. They already are something. You don't have to make them something. You have to see who they are. So I have a 1.5-year-old also. And sometimes I would just say, I am looking forward to seeing who this person is that I have got.
Yeah.
And only when I'll take a back seat and I'll just observe him, that's less parenting, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to see who he is, and I will be able to do the right thing for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing, because I believe all of us are born geniuses, right? Like there is an element of
Yeah.
genius inside of us, and somehow that element of genius is curbed in the process, because somehow the society has defined what success is.
Yeah.
You're good with academics, you're successful. You're good with finances, you're successful. But people just don't focus on the other areas of life. And now, with the level of exposure that is there and the level of things that are there for parents, I mean, I've seen parents put so much pressure on themselves and put their children in literally every other class that there is. Now, I want to understand, do they truly want their child to thrive, or is it coming from a space of FOMO? They're feeling FOMO. Oh, my neighbor's son or daughter is going to this class. My son is not going to this class. That's why I have to put them there. What is the actual truth behind this?
FOMO is there.
Okay.
So FOMO in the sense that they feel that, am I not doing? See, Gayatri, I understand parents. So I'm not blaming them. When they're doing something for the child, they're putting them in 4 classes in a day, 3 classes in a day. It is because they want to think that they're a good parent. I'm also doing enough for my child. Okay, this one is doing, am I not doing enough for my child? Am I not putting them in the right classes? Oh my God, I need to do something more. So that is the kind of FOMO that I'm talking about. They want to fall into the category of a good
Good
parent.
parent.
Every parent wants to be a good parent.
Mm.
So that's why they are doing this. But the point is, sometimes, when you'll talk to parents, Gayatri, they will say that I did put pressure on my child. And yes, I had a side of harsh parenting when I was parenting my child. But today, my child is a doctor.
Mm.
See, my child is thriving. They are successful in their career. So what wrong did I do? I
Yeah.
did the right things, and that's what people say about themselves. Also, today I'm a doctor because my parents did
Yeah.
this to me. So that's why I'm doing this to my child, because it seems like this is the right way. But I have got doctors who are not able to be calm with their children even when they want to be. I have got surgeons or people coming to me who are facing anxiety and are taking pills for anxiety.
Okay.
They are not able to understand themselves. They lack that emotional connection within themselves, and they are facing these situations. So we have to understand, was that really worth it?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
you're successful at one level, but what about that inner happiness? What about those mental health challenges that are gifted to you with that pressure?
That's true. But how do we find a balance? Because I can look back at my own childhood. My mother was very, very strict because my mother wanted me to study really well, extremely strict, and always wanted me to be a high achiever. It did create a lot of anxiety inside of me, but eventually in every aspect of my life, my mindset was like, okay, I have to be a high achiever. So now when I look at life, right? If my mother was not like that, would I have the success that I have right now? The answer is probably a no. If my mother was really nice, I would have been a much more calmer person. I wouldn't have gone on this path. So, how do I balance between these two?
The problem is not that we want children to be high achievers.
Mm.
The problem is that when a child is not a high achiever, then
Mm.
what?
Okay.
See, we want children to be successful.
Mm.
We are not preparing them to handle failure.
Mm. True.
So, because that's part of life. They're not always, they cannot. Um, so, when I always talk about how children, when they are high achievers in school, Gayatri, and till 12th standard, they are seen by the teachers. We all have
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
toppers who are very good. They're the head girl, the head boy. And when they go out in the world and they are in colleges where they get exposed to so many people, and so many people are head girls and head
Mm.
boys coming from
Mm.
different schools, and they come in the real society, they feel very lost at the time.
Okay.
And they have been so used to feeling happy because they have achieved something. That's when they do not stand that top position,
Yeah.
that's when they start feeling all these anxieties, depression. They feel they're not good enough because their self-worth and self-esteem is attached to achieving.
Correct. Actually, correct. Yeah.
So now they are going to take that journey.
Mm.
So when you say how to balance, let them know that it is okay to fail also.
Ah, right.
Even if you make a mistake, it's part of your growth. We'll do better. When they do well, for example, a child who just stood first, instead of talking about, yay, you got first, yay, you got, look at her, she topped the class, or she's got like so many marks. Instead of just saying that, just say that I'm so proud of you that you worked so hard.
Right.
So we are praising the effort, because effort is what we control.
Right.
And then next time when the child stands third, the same child, you say, but I'm still happy. What about you? Do you think that you worked hard enough? If you did, it is okay. So my point is, for example, I have my 8-year-old, and we have just started having these assessments. That
Okay.
this was the first year in one, and these are 20 marks assessments. So in one he's getting 19, in one he's getting 10. Maybe he got 6 also at a time. Now we are learning. So now, how is my reaction when he gets 19, and how is my reaction when he gets 10? So when he gets 19, I'm very happy, of course. But when he gets 10, then what do I say? I say that, Sevir, it's okay. What do you feel about it? How do you feel about it? And he's like very confused. Okay, I don't know, because he's just learning. He's just understanding. And I'll say, did we study? Did we study well? Every time I told you to study, you did, right? Yeah. Every time, and at night also, you learned the tables and you slept, right? So we did our part, bacha.
Ah,
Now, what happened over there is not in our hands. You did your best.
Right.
Now we are going to do it again, beta.
Right.
This is part of life. That's how I'm preparing him, that when he gets 10 marks, even then, he does not lose his self esteem.
Yeah, his sense of self worth is not tied to his accomplishments.
Yeah.
Right? You train them to value the effort that they put in.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's very, very beautiful.
Because that's what they need. We need a learning mindset, Gayatri.
Mm.
With so many changes happening, this AI, chat GPT, I do not even understand as much. I just understand the world is changing at a very fast pace.
Yes.
And children need to develop the skill of learning. So ultimately these marks, this learning in the school and getting the performing, more than that, my child needs to fall in the process, fall in love with the process of learning.
Yes.
Because if he does that and he gets good at learning, then he's going to learn chat, GPT, AI,
Anything.
whatever is to come.
So, Ishina, I'm not a mother yet, so I really don't understand it, how it feels to be a mother. But what I see around is the way this generation parents are stressed is way more than what it used to be 20, 30 years back. What do you think is a major reason that parents are so stressed in this generation?
I think there's a lot of pressure, academic pressure that has come up. Parents are also, they were not raised in this world that we are raising our children. So this era of mobiles, phones, everything, there's so much. I mean, I remember when there was a time when a child is in the room, they're safe. Now a child in the room with a phone is actually unsafe.
True.
So it's scary for me as a parent even to think about when I'm here. What about how much screen will my child be watching now? How much junk food will my child be having now? So there's a lot that is not in our control anymore, Gayatri.
Right.
And that's what I think stresses us out. And then there's so much advice on parenting.
Exactly.
And so much advice is okay, the judgment that comes with that advice, and then we become very critical about ourselves also. So am I giving too much screen? Am I not giving screen at all? So I also get this question that my child has not watched screen till the age of 5 because I always wanted to keep him away, but now I feel, have I made a mistake because he does not know anything about phones and every other child knows? So am I keeping my child away from these things and not equipping my child for the world? There's so much pressure, Gayatri.
Yeah.
So the stress is there.
Yeah.
And the stress on ourselves, can you imagine? We are working parents. We are in a generation where women are told to be mothers and then also are said that you can work now. Hai na? So though it's a beautiful movement, but it is just creating double pressure. Now there are two parents working. So they are now more than ever, they're confused how to raise this child with emotional connection because they lack time.
Yes.
So they are balancing work, they are balancing motherhood or parenting, I can say. So there's this person, Erica Komisar, and I've been listening to her for the last few months. And she is very blatantly saying that that mothers, they need to be present for children, and the pressure that we are creating like this is we are not paying enough attention to children. We are paying so much attention. We are not paying enough attention to raising children because now we are more towards how women should be working as well. Now that is putting a pressure on the child and the parents.
Mother, yeah.
So I think I've said so many things I've highlighted, but the list is endless. There is a lot of pressure today.
It's crazy, right? Because recently I think I read somewhere where it says it actually takes a village to raise a child.
Where is the village?
Exactly. It's just the mother and the father, sometimes the grandparents. The parents are also working. I mean, as much as the parents want to do the best for their child, they are also human beings. They also get exhausted in the process. Yeah, that's true. And I think you've also watched this video. Recently, Varun Maya had posted a video about the Coco Melon and how children, no matter where they are, the Coco Melon music plays, they run and they come to watch the TV. I mean, what does a show or a video like Coco Melon does to the child's brain?
It overstimulates the child's brain. The child's brain is not equipped to handle so much. So many colors, so much. I mean, when they are looking at it, they are stimulated to the level that normal life will not seem fun enough.
Okay.
They will stop taking interest in other things because that is so interesting and they are literally hooked to it. Um, but that's the thing, Gayatri. Again, like you're talking about Coco Melon. Now, parent who's showing Coco Melon, it is supposed to be for children. Imagine it is made for
Children.
children.
Right.
But and then a video like this pops up that do not show Coco Melon.
Mm.
This is what is happening to your child's
Mm.
brain. Imagine the stress and the pressure that we're putting on parents again. So, and again, I was just, when you were talking about this, I went back to that question that the stress is because of all these things.
Mm.
And that's why a parent today needs to be well equipped, understanding what kind of videos can I show to my child
Mm.
that does not overstimulate my child. What is the right age? What is the right time? What is quantity versus quality when I'm showing screens to my child? So there's a lot that the parent needs to educate themselves to raise a child, and most parents do not prepare themselves for this.
Right. So you also told me that the prefrontal cortex of the child is not developed as yet. Can you help us understand right from the time the baby is born up until the age of 9 or 10? How does the brain development happen?
So the brain development starts as soon as the baby is out.
Mm.
And there are these neuron connections, synapses being formed as the child is interacting with the environment. As small as a 5-day-old child, when they cry and a parent goes and soothes, the connections form that I'm safe, that I can trust the world. So Erickson talks about trust versus mistrust. That's the first stage that Erickson talks about, 0 to 2 years.
Okay.
That's when children are making meaning of the world. Am I safe? Can I trust when I feel, when I am not able to regulate, when I feel unsafe, will there be someone who will take care of me? When we do not provide that, that's when insecurity starts.
Okay.
So the first few years are extremely, extremely important. The first 3 years are extremely important. Someone asked me that, how is it that the first 3 years are so important when I do not have any memory of even being in that stage? And you say that today it affects me, because whatever happens at that time, it is so deeply ingrained in the subconscious before the language develops. So you can't make meaning of it because the language is not even developed. So these memories are in parts of our brain that does not have language. You
Correct.
can't access it because you do not have the language to access it and speak it out.
Okay.
Can you imagine? But it's there, and
Okay.
it's still guiding us in
Okay.
our subconscious way, in the way we approach the world. So first 3 years are extremely, extremely important for the child to feel secure, and for that we need to emotionally tune in
Mm.
with the child.
Mm.
So Gabor Matt beautifully says that, I really have a gut feeling that whatever he's saying is very true. Many people say that ADHD is only hereditary, or it's only because of the gene. But we have understood that when children do not get enough emotional attunement, is what is the word that he uses. That means the children do not feel connected emotionally to their primary caregiver enough. That's how they start developing symptoms of attentional deficit disorder.
Okay.
That important the first 3 years are.
Okay.
So when we are not able to connect with our children emotionally, or we are not able to regulate ourselves emotionally, for example, a mother is into depression, or the father is very aggressive, and they see all these things, it affects them to the extent that they can develop these symptoms. That
Okay.
important all this is.
Okay.
After that, after the age of 3, the prefrontal cortex kicks in.
Mm.
That's when they start asking why questions.
Mm.
So before that, they were not asking. So
Yeah.
now they're going to say, why the sky is like this?
Yeah.
Why am I wearing this? Why do we have to go here? So the logic side has
Okay.
now kicked in. Before that, the child is completely, so at the age of 2, we call it terrible twos. It's because the child is not going to use logic at all. They do not have that equipment in their brain. So they're going to just take the class and throw it. They'll just go somewhere and they will not care if they'll get hurt. That's when you need to look at the child constantly, because you cannot leave the child even for a minute. But after the age of 3, developing the logic develops.
Okay.
So now they are going to start throwing a little more tantrums, in the sense they might start arguing here and there. They will start trying to become more independent in doing things. So that is when children again I will say, at every stage children need a parent who is able to be calm, not only be calm all the time, but emotionally connect with the child. Then at the age of 7 8, another,
Mm.
I mean, gush of prefrontal cortex development is going to happen. That's when children will now start talking a little like adults. So now you will see, he just speaks like me. He will just say, "Arey, do this na, mama,"
Uh,
and they'll say, "Oh my God, you have become so." And the way you are talking, they will be understanding logic even more. They'll be understanding rules. They will also start understanding that they can, they can challenge rules. They can try and manipulate parents, and they can argue with parents even more. So that's when you will be able to see that change, I mean, but particularly then by the age of 9 10 preteens start.
right.
That's the stage when the prefrontal cortex is now getting prepared to be an adult brain.
Okay.
It's going to go through a proper remodeling, and they're preparing the brain to be more sophisticated like an adult brain.
Mm.
But when they are going towards that, it's under construction.
Yes.
So sometimes people say that my 8-year-old was better behaved than my 12 13-year-old,
Right.
which I completely can understand.
Uh,
It's because they are going through a lot of, it's not only hormonal changes, but they're also going through a proper brain remodeling. So that's when more of emotional outburst, aggression, and all these things that you will be able to see more, but it will settle down as they will reach the ages of 15 16 17.
Mm.
This prefrontal cortex will completely develop by the age of 25. That's
Okay.
mid 20s.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now in the transitioning phase, that is when the child transitions from being a child, that adolescence age, what do parents do to kind of make this journey better for the parents and also for the children?
The first 10 years matter here.
Okay.
So if you have been using, I mean, yes, you have been using harsh techniques to parent your child, this is the time when it'll backfire.
Okay.
So you might just say that till now my child was listening to me. Or
Mm.
sometimes parents at the age of 5 6 will say, but that my child is fine. I hit my child, but look at him. He will listen to me
Mm.
every time, and academically also he's performing very well. But at the age of 11 12, it will backfire, and the child will start answering back. You will be able to see a tremendous change in the way the child is. So, if you want to prepare for the adolescence, I'm not saying that if your child is now 10 years, everything is lost. I really do not want to say it if a parent is listening to this. My point is, as early as you will start working with your child in this way, where you are, again, the same thing that comes to my mind is you work on the relationship part while you are parenting your child.
Mm.
So if you're not working enough on that relationship part, that's when you're going to face more and more challenges
Mm.
during adolescence, because they are going to gain more independence now.
Mm.
So your control is going to lessen as children are growing. So if you are not going to depend on that relationship and you do not even control the child, then you will feel very helpless and lost at that time.
Right. Right.
Relationship gives us influence, Gayatri.
Mm.
So ultimately, we can't control children. Can we control children?
No.
I ask this question so many times that if you get confused, because when you say you can't control children, parents are like, what? So how am I supposed to nurture this child and raise this child? I mean, if I don't even control this child, I'm the parent. And look
Mhm.
at the size of the child, it looks like I can control this child. So, but when I ask this question, that imagine there's a 5-year-old and you tell this 5-year-old to complete a sheet or do some work, right? Like write A 5 times. And you can tell the child, instruct the child, explain the child why it's important to write. If they still don't write, you can get angry, you can bribe, you can threaten, you can say things like, if you'll write this, I'll give you this. If you don't write this, you're not getting any screen. You can hit the child ultimately when if the child is not listening to you and not writing. All that you can do. But ultimately, if the child will write or not,
Mm.
who decides?
The child decides.
Who decides to move their hand, pick that pencil, write?
It's
We
a
don't control
yeah.
children.
Yeah.
We can't. We can only control children till the time they allow us to control them.
Mm.
And that's where adolescence comes in.
Mm.
They might just stop allowing you to control them.
Okay. Depending on how they were treated for the first 10 years.
So yeah, somewhere my point over here is that we can't control, but we can influence. We get that influence when we work on connection. Influence means that when you tell children to do something, they say yes more often.
Yeah.
They follow rules happily also. You do not have to get angry at everything to get things done. They cooperate more with you. You get that influence. And it's true in any relationship, Gayatri.
Yeah.
You take your husband. If your husband is not understanding you emotionally, imagine,
Yeah.
and is always instructing, ridiculing, telling you're not doing this properly, why are you behaving like this all the time? You don't understand, you're not working enough, and you keep doing this, and then your husband tells you to, do something for you, you'll be like, hey, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't feel good. Or if you'll do it, maybe it's because you're a people pleaser.
Exactly.
You're just pleasing the person
Exactly.
again and again, and you're not happy about it. The husbands will also lose influence over you, on you, ultimately, just because they're not working enough on the relationship. So that's why I say work on the relationship. You are just going to be the parent for the first like 18 years. That's how we call it. And then you're going to have an adult to adult relationship with your child for the rest of your life. And how that relationship will depend on how you were with your child.
Yeah, that's very true. So, one thing, Ishina, what I've noticed is all my friends who had an amazing and a very soft childhood while growing up, their mindset versus, I mean, I'm using myself as a comparison. I also know a couple of people who went through very similar adverse situations like I did. The kind of resilience that both groups have is completely different. So, it has kind of made me believe that more adversity equals more resilience. Is that actually true?
I cannot deny that.
Okay.
I cannot deny that because resilience is born through tolerating things when you're growing, right? So we there's something we call frustration tolerance. So we need to inculcate more frustration tolerance in our children. Whenever you go through a hard time, you build resilience, right? Whenever you have to do something that you don't want to, or so my point is that when you're talking about another side of parenting, that's where parents are getting confused. So when we're talking about conscious parenting or calm parenting, we are not telling parents to make life comfortable for children all the time. That is actually cajoling children. That is then again you're not doing right by children. We need to let children face frustration, face disappointment. So if your child is not getting that toy and they are crying, I'm just telling you to be calm. I'm not telling you to give that toy to the child. I'm not telling you to give in to their demands every time. Or when they are going through a hard situation at school, I'm not telling you to just bounce in and just start talking to and start solving things for your children. That's where we need to take a step back.
Okay.
We need to let children face situations and find their own solutions to it. We need to let children cry without getting what they want so that they know how to take frustration. So we talk about natural consequences sometimes also. Let children go through natural consequences. For example, my child wants something and is feeling really upset about it. He wants more screen time and I'm not able to give it. Now he's very upset. Now he's crying a lot. So over here, I'm just telling the parent not to emotionally lose their own control with the child. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about calm parenting. And then what to do where the child is crying. So that's when we let the child feel the emotion of that frustration because they're not getting it, go through it and calm down. And that's when that's how we raise resilience in children.
Okay.
They just learned to get through that emotion of frustration without getting what they want.
Right. So, what do you think is a problem with overprotection in parenting?
The problem with overprotection is that then we are not letting children become resilient.
Right.
If you're going to protect children all the time, then children are always going to look at you to protect them. How will they know how to protect themselves? It's very hard to be that kind of a parent, Gayatri. We love children so much. We have this instinct to just protect our child, save our child whenever. Why is it so hard for children to take tantrums? Oh, sorry. Why is it so hard for parents to take children's tantrums? Because it's very uncomfortable to see a child in that emotion. And mostly we parents, when we used to cry and feel those emotions when we were young, I don't think we were given the space to
Yeah.
cry. So our parents were not comfortable with our emotions. Today we are not comfortable with our children's emotions. We are not even comfortable with our own emotions. That's what we need to break.
So, actually, there's no very substantial scientific proof about how children are as adults once they've gentle parented, right? So, there is so much about gentle parenting. People talk about, like, don't let your children cry, just sit with them with their emotions. There are too many definitions of gentle parenting. What is the actual meaning of gentle parenting?
So Gayatri, I'll be very honest. I do not like the word gentle parenting at all.
Mm.
I will not use it often. What I will use it conscious parenting or calm parenting, because I believe that you need to be calmer in order to deal with your children in an effective way. So you need to work on yourself like that. But when we say gentle parenting, that's where parents are getting very confused. So when you'll go online, you'll go on Instagram, there's so many criticism on gentle parenting also. People are making fun of it also. It is because they don't understand what is gentle parenting. They think pampering children is gentle parenting. Not putting boundaries to children is gentle parenting. Always being calm is gentle parenting. Is it even possible? Can we even be calm all the time? Do you think that I look this calm person on Instagram or when I'm talking, I'm always calm? We are human beings, and then we are carrying our own baggage
Yes.
with us. So, gentle parenting is a word that's actually confusing parents, because of which parents try these things and then they give up, because they say that my child has completely stopped listening to me. The behavior has gone even worse because I've stopped getting angry at my child. So that's why I say calm parenting. Calm parenting means, or conscious parenting means, parent your children while being awake, not sleeping. What does that mean? Do not only look at the child, look at yourself. What am I doing? Why am I getting so angry? Why am I not able to be patient with my child? When I sit to make my child study, why do I get so angry? Why is my body getting like this? Where is that coming from? When my child is getting aggressive, where is that coming from? What is under my child's behavior? Is my child not feeling emotionally connected? Is my child not feeling good about himself? Am I comparing too much? Am I getting angry too much? Where is this coming from? Is something happening in the school that is not helping my child? So conscious means being awake and looking at things from that perspective is what we are talking about.
Right.
And having boundaries. Having boundaries is something that children need. Gayatri, children need boundaries. That makes them feel safe, like that there's someone who's, they cannot have boundaries for themselves. Their brain is not developed. Today we can have those boundaries. Okay, I'll only watch for half an hour and then I'll switch off my phone, and even then we sometimes are not able to do that, but at least we have that equipment in our brain now. Children don't have it. They need some adult to put boundaries for them and help them in following those boundaries, instead of we are helping children.
Yeah.
And we can only help when we come from a place of calm.
Right.
So we need to have those boundaries for children. So when you say no, stick to it. When you tell children that if you do this, this is what is going to happen, put it calmly. You can say that it can be a consequence, not a threat. So for example, your child is not going to school and you do not know how to handle it. So in that situation also, you'll have to say that, beta, you'll have to go to school. It is something that we'll have to do while seeing where this behavior is coming from again.
Okay.
So as a parent, you're not only putting the boundary of you have to go to school. You have to see where is this coming from, in the sense, is my child going through something in the school? Understanding the child, asking the child, emotionally connecting with the child enough so that the child says, if you say something like, why don't you want to go to school? What is this now? What happened? Did teacher say something? Now here the child will not open up. Look at you.
Yes.
So that's when I say calm is important.
Right.
So then you can just, so that how do we talk to the child when we are calm? We say, hey, what's happening? It seems that you were going happily and now you do not want to. Is something happening in school that you're not happy about? Did you experience something? How are your friends?
Mm.
Who are your friends? Who do you talk to? Or sometimes I remember when my son had this situation where he did not want to school for 1 month. I struggled with him. That's when he was just transitioning from a playway method to a proper like traditional school system that we have, and he was still getting accustomed to that. And that's when I had to have a boundary that
Yes.
you have to go to school. With that, I had to be curious, why is this happening? So for the longest time, I was just trying to understand. He would just say that, mama, teacher gets angry, we have to sit and we have to write so much, I don't want to go to school. So from him I could understand that whatever he's facing is coming in that normal range according to our culture and our school system. But he's just, now this is where he was becoming more and more resilient. This was the process. It was very uncomfortable. The process towards becoming resilient is very uncomfortable for the
Yes.
child and for the parent. That's what you have to endure, but you still have to put the boundary that you have to go to school while seeing, okay, let me talk to the teacher and understand it's getting too much. It's been 10 days. Let me just understand, talking to the teacher without blaming them and just understanding the situation, helping the child emotionally feel secure when you're sending the child. So in the morning, I remember I would do some these affirmations that I am calm, and my child can go to school, and I can be calm while sending him to school. After 7:30, I can just cry later even if I'm not feeling good, but till 7:30 I have to be regulated with my child. I would do all this, I'll frame my mind. That's what I can do as a parent.
Yes.
And then when I'm waking my child, no matter how emotionally dysregulated he feels, he doesn't want to go, I'm calmly able to help him put the boundary. You have to go to school. I can't just
Drag him.
So I need his cooperation.
Yeah.
Ultimately, for that cooperation I need to work on my connection, because that connection will give me enough influence over him that he will cooperate. So I'm going to keep working on that connection while being firm. So I'm not angry, I'm not saying you have to go to school, but I'm saying, hey, we have to go to school, bacha. We have to do that, beta. So there's a difference. When you're angry, that means you're not emotionally in control. But when you are firm, you're in control of yourself while you're putting that boundary. And that's the kind of parenting that we are talking about. And then sometimes I remember I would have to put the consequence that, beta, if you're not going to go to school, does not mean you're going to watch screens all day, or does not mean that we will still go for that weekend outing. There are things that you have to do as as part of your this is your duty, your responsibility, or whatever we call it. And then there's the fun part.
Yeah.
So we have to balance all this, bacha. You have to do your work, and like I do it, I work and then we have fun. So I would give him all this wisdom. And how you're giving that wisdom? Are you lecturing? Are you explaining one-sided conversation, or are you emotionally and connecting and saying, how mom? So we say that when you're talking to children, instead of one-sided communication, have a two-sided communication. No matter how old your child is, you can still have it. So with my 5-year-old also, I can say, so when does mama go to office? In the morning. And then when does mama watch TV and sit with you in the evening? So how do I balance? Similarly, what do? You don't go to office, so where do you go? So instead of I'm just telling you, how mama goes to office, how you have to go to school, we are connecting enough with the child so that our message gets across.
Okay.
Connection also helps us in getting our message across to the child. Otherwise, parents say, I explain so much and my child still does not understand.
That's so gentle parenting is not about saying yes to everything, but it is about saying no, but being firm and calm with that.
Yes. Yes.
Right. It's so misunderstood these days when it comes to gentle parenting.
Very misunderstood. That's why I don't like the word gentle parenting.
Okay, calm parenting. So how do we deal with a child who throws tantrums and is constantly arguing?
How do you deal with it? I'll give you clear steps first.
Yes.
So the first thing that you do is you have to regulate yourself. Because if your child is throwing a tantrum, your child is feeling emotions that the child cannot regulate. Simple. That's why that's the tantrum, or argument is also a kind of tantrum. But now when you look at your child, you also feel some emotions. You might feel helpless because your child is crying and you can't do anything about it. You might feel frustrated or angry because you can see that your child is not understanding and is the way they're answering back. We have come from a traditional parenting system. When a child talks like this, it may trigger us that how can my child talk like this? And no matter what, you are going to feel some emotions in that moment if you do not regulate. If you also start shouting, if you also start getting very anxious, oh my God, what happened? Please don't do. If you become like this, then you become a child with your child. Because you have a developed brain, you can regulate. But if you're not using it, then you are also throwing another tantrum with the child. And we do not want to do that. We do not want to become part of the problem. We are the adult. We want to be a problem
Yes.
solver in the situation instead. And we can only be a problem solver when we are approaching the child in that situation, in that tantrum, from a place of calm. So that's the first thing. Not easy, very easy to say, very difficult to do in that situation, but practice, practice, practice. And be practical. Even sometimes you may just have to, Beta, why are you doing this? And you may just have to take a pause and say, okay, I don't want to speak like this. And you can say that in front of your child. You can demonstrate how you are regulating your emotion. So it's not like when my son is behaving in a certain way that's triggering me, I'm like, yes, beta, it is okay. That's not how it is in practically. Practically, it is like, okay, Savir, I'm here, beta. Beta, please. Oh God, I don't want to talk like this, Savir. I'll just take a deep breath. Sometimes I'll have to do all that.
Okay.
And sometimes my son now will say that, breathe, mama,
Huh?
when I'm losing it. Because he can see that, and he can see that it helps. And sometimes I will tell Savir, just take 5 breaths. And he'll say, no, 3 breaths. Let's just take 3 breaths. So I'm connecting with my child. I'm not idealistic. Nothing is ideal over here. So the first step is being calm. You're calm and calming your body, Gayatri, not only being quiet. Parents think that my child is throwing a tantrum. It still escalated. I was calm, but actually they were quiet, and their body, their expression, their vibration, everything gave it away. You were just quiet. And after that quiet, you burst.
Right.
It's because you were not calm. You were just processing, why is my child doing this? Oh my God, I still have to go to work and this is what he's doing. I gave him so much of TV time and still he's crying for this. I mean, am I doing something wrong? Why is he behaving like this? Is he okay? If you're going to keep thinking like this while you are in that situation, then even when you are quiet, you are not calm and you'll burst. It's just, you're piling up.
Got it.
So that's the first step. It's for a very short time, but you need so much information for that. So that's the first step. Second is you connect with the child emotionally. So you do not only give logic. When a child is throwing a tantrum, their emotional side of the brain is overpowering. It's becoming a barrier to the logical side. When you're explaining and you're saying, Beta, I told you we cannot watch more screen. I told you for 10 minutes you can watch and again you're crying. I gave you 5 minutes extra, still you're crying. The battery is off. How can I give you? All this is logic.
Okay.
You're explaining to the child. Mostly you will see that the child's tantrum is escalating when you're saying all these lines, because the child is just looking at you and saying, okay, I'm getting a lot of attention from the parent, but they cannot understand anything else. What they can only see is your expression and whatever you are saying in the tone that you're saying, but no words, no logic is getting across. So what do? We connect with that emotion that the child is feeling in that moment through empathy. Now, empathy is a very overused word these days. What I really mean to break it down is whatever the child is feeling, you just connect with that. Your child wants more screen and you say, I know you want more screen. I know it, Bacha, but I did not finish that episode. I wanted to finish that episode. Even if that episode was for 2 hours and you could have not allowed him, but can you just say that, oh, you did not finish that episode. Oh, that's why you are upset. Oh my God. Oh, my poor baby. Come here. So you are still connecting with the child. Oh, you really want to have that ice cream. So when we talk about empathy, sometimes parents just copy paste this word. I understand that you're feeling upset.
Okay.
And it's not genuine.
Yes.
You just copy paste.
Yes.
You just want to solve that situation. You want your child to stop crying. That's why you're using that line. And it's not genuine. That's why it's not getting across. Genuine empathy can look like as simple as, I know. So with my 1.5-year-old, how do you think I'm empathizing? If I tell him, I understand you are upset, he doesn't have that kind of language. So in that moment, I just have to have empathy in my body, in my expressions, in just my, I know, oh, you want it, oh, my bacha. That's what empathy is, really connecting with the child in that moment. And you don't overdo empathy. You don't keep saying, I understand, because then also it looks like attention.
Yeah.
Now the child will keep crying. So you empathize, then you have empathy in your body. You are there with your child. You're not paying too much attention. You do not have to keep engaging with the tantrum the whole time. You do not have to keep arguing with a child who's arguing the whole time. You can just say, I know, I think you are very upset right now. That's why you're talking like this. That's it. Okay, I'm here. It's okay. Maybe you need time. So in these things you can say, and you just need to let the tantrum pass. Ultimately the tantrum will pass. It's an emotion.
Mm.
It's an emotion that has entered your child's body. Your child needs some way. So your child may cry, may be loud, may scream, may argue, may say things that are very hurtful if they're older. So my 8-year-old will now say that I hate you, mama. You are the worst, mama. And after 5 minutes, he'll say, I love you, mama. You are the best, mama. So if you think about it, if I take it personally, I should I take it personally? It's just coming out because of that emotion. When it will pass, your child will settle down. So let that emotion pass.
Mm.
And you can talk later.
Okay.
So give space. So the point is, the steps were: be calm, you empathize, you give space to the child, you don't keep engaging with the tantrum, you let the tantrum pass
Mm.
without losing your calm
Got it.
and without giving in. You're not giving in. You're not giving that
Yeah.
phone. You're not giving that ice cream. You're not giving that, oh God, that's a recipe for disaster.
Okay.
Because when you start giving into the child's tantrums become addictive behaviors. Now your child will repeat tantrums because it gets them what they want. And it's not that they're manipulating you. Sometimes parents feel he's so smart. See, he knows if he's going to cry like this, if he's going to talk like this, I will give him. No, he doesn't know it. You have told him, you have taught him through his experience that this is going to happen. They're not manipulating, they're understanding us, what works with us. So if you're going to be a parent who can calmly let that tantrum pass without giving in, your child will understand they don't work as much and they will try some different behaviors to get things done.
Mm. So if we can regulate our emotions, as a result of which they also regulate their emotions, then we validate their emotions and still not give in to it. They understand no amount of tantrums is going to get me what I asked for.
You just put it beautifully.
Okay. And now they learn better ways of asking things and they learn to regulate themselves. That's so beautiful. You just told me that you did your PhD in parenting, right? Which is very new for me. Like, because I don't come from that background, it is completely new for me. So tell me why you were curious about doing this and how it has helped you in your own journey.
So I did my PhD in human development.
Okay.
I took parenting as my niche.
Okay.
So I took interest in it because I just like to see how children are growing. So during my masters, we would observe children in nurseries and with parents otherwise, and we would have to do these assignments. We would have to pen down our observations, and that was the time I started taking interest in it.
Okay.
I could see how children are different. I could just connect with them. I feel like I have this special connection with children, though I talk to parents and I also feel I have a special connection with them, but it is because of children ultimately. So that's how I got into this field. And during my PhD, I just took this topic randomly that I want to see how parent-child relationships are and how parents can influence children's growth. And then I became a mother while doing my PhD.
Yes.
So all the theories that I had, read, and all these preaching that I would do, so be calm when children are throwing a tantrum or do this, these are the steps. And when I became a parent, I realized, oh my God, this is not easy. Oh my God, it's so easy to say be calm, but when you're in that situation, it takes a lot.
Yeah.
And I also understood the side of parents much deeply.
Okay.
I can say that I got a deeper understanding of what a parent is going through. It's not just parenting, it's a journey that
Right.
a parent is taking. Through my own journey, that's what took me to, that's how I took dive in this field.
Okay.
Is what I can say.
Okay. Now, what we've also started to see with the surge of social media is a lot of young children have started to create content. I want to understand, how is this affecting the child?
Beautiful question. I also wonder. I also wonder how it is. It really depends on how it's being managed with the child. Because how young are we talking about, Gayatri?
Let's say some 6-7-year-old.
Yeah, I can see children are dancing,
Dancing,
or children are doing this. It's very important for us to very maturely keep talking to children about how views are not as important. That's the practical thing. Even as adults today, Gayatri, I run an Instagram handle, you run an Instagram handle. Likes, views, it's very, very important and challenging at the same time to detach ourselves from that.
Mm.
Because so that's what, from now, if we keep telling that you do your best, you put it out there, and maybe even not let the child watch their videos, scroll Instagram just because they're on it. Very, very important that you keep them away from social media as much as possible, even if they are showcasing their talent on
Okay.
social media.
Okay.
Disconnecting themselves from that as much as possible.
So I want to understand, what does it do to a child's brain when they constantly watch YouTube shorts and Instagram videos?
They are not able to regulate themselves. They'll have more aggression. They will have more tantrums, more behavioral problems because they're watching shorts. There are two sides of it. All these things will not only come because of the fast changing videos, because the quality of content is not for them.
Exactly.
What are they watching?
Exactly.
Aggression are they watching? I mean, I really wonder, when they watch something, what, with the development of the brain that they have, what meaning are they making out of it?
Mm.
How much are they normalizing these things?
Mm.
Even when they're watching not YouTube shorts, also they're just watching content. Otherwise, also, it's very important, the quality of content that they're consuming. It's going to affect what kind of neuron connections they are going to form and their behavior ultimately. And scrolling, oh my God, it's not good for us only.
Yes.
I mean, it gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm scrolling, I'll have to like, stop, Ishina, you're not feeling good. When I tell parents, mothers also, to take a break for 10 minutes, even if you're not getting that break, just for 10 minutes, go to the washroom, just breathe if you're not able to calm down. One thing that I tell them is, don't scroll.
Mm.
Now, those 10 minutes are not for you to scroll on Instagram, because that will make you even more anxious. If that does that to adults with developed brains, can you imagine what it's doing to children?
Right. Right.
Their brain cannot take such fast changing content. I mean, that emotion, can you see something happy? Can
Yeah.
you imagine what it does to us from inside?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary.
And even for children, now that the brain is developing, it's even more challenging for the child to kind of regulate the emotions that they feel.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. So now I remember this video, I think a few years back I saw of Anushka Sharma's, where she spoke about how in her household, whatever food was made, they better eat the food. If they say, I don't like the food, the father said, okay, go to sleep without the food. I mean, I understand what that context was. But now do you think children are spoiled with way too many choices?
So, yeah, again, that thing about gentle parenting that we were talking about, confused, again, parents are confused,
Mm.
because we talk about giving choices to children so that they feel that they can take decisions. So, ultimately, we want children to feel they have the power also.
Mm.
Children sometimes are throwing more tantrums because they are feeling powerless.
Mm.
So, we want to give them some choices so that they can feel, yes, they can also take the decision.
Mm.
How many choices are we giving?
Mm.
So when you talk about food, you can say, beta, either you can have this or you can have this.
Mm.
You can decide what you want to
Mm.
have. And not two choices. Now, we are not giving, okay, this also not, okay, then this, okay, then this, okay, then this. We don't have to do all that. We do have to, again, that boundary has to be there. So while we are giving choices, we have the boundary. These are the two choices. You have to choose out of that. Another thing is, the food has come. Now the child is saying, I don't want to eat it.
Mm.
Now, the child had only said that he will eat it, and now they're saying they don't want to eat. And that's when you say that, okay, I'll make something else. Then you're not putting the boundary again.
Mhm.
The child needs the boundary. Hey, you told me you're going to eat this. This is how it is right now. Over here, another point is, do you get very angry when, again, regulation?
Mm.
When you're talking to your children, what looks like firm and authority?
Mm.
What looks like authority? Authority looks like, beta, you'll have to eat this now. But you told me so, I do not have any other option. You can have this. I know you can have this.
Mm.
You can have half of it if you want.
Mm.
You don't want to have it? Beta, this is what we have.
Mm.
This is one way of doing it. I'm calm, I'm firm. Another way is, you told me you'll have this. You're still, again, you're doing this. You always do this. So many times I have told you. And mostly such parents will ultimately give another option to the child.
Ah.
They're going to get angry. They're going to say things. They're not going to be calm. And because they're not able to handle the situation, they might even, and they're not able to handle the fact that the child is not eating anything. They feel so uncomfortable with that fact that they will provide another choice. So not being calm will take us to all these directions.
Okay. Okay. So also when it comes to choices, it is about how many choices we give, and it is also about us being very firm with that.
We are still the parent, Gayatri.
Yeah.
We have to be the parent. Gentle parenting does not mean now the child is going to take all the decisions for us. Not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. And also, have you realized this trend where parents don't want their children to be bored at all? They kind of keep giving them things again and again. I mean, don't you think that is kind of taking them away from the fact that they can become more creative in boredom?
That's very true. That's very true. And the main thing is these devices that we have today, because of which children always have the option of picking the device and just scrolling or just watching something. Because of that, also, children are not getting time to get bored, because whenever they get bored, they will say TV.
Mm,
They will say, give me your phone.
mm,
And that children need to get bored in order to think out of the box.
yeah.
Like you said, creativity. And also tolerate boredom.
Mm,
So it's so difficult for us, for children to just, for us to just sometimes even stand in a line without a phone. You will just
true.
take it out and you'll start scrolling. Can we tolerate boredom? We are telling children to tolerate boredom. So it comes from us also.
Mm.
We also need to, can you just sit in a plane without watching anything? You're expecting the child to do that.
That's a very interesting point.
So boredom, tolerance of frustration, it's something that we also need to observe ourselves, and then help children to develop that also, because that tolerance will help them be successful.
That's very true. Ishina, what, according to you, are the three things that a parent should never tell their children?
That you're not good enough.
Mm.
That's one thing, that you cannot do this, because what we are saying to the child becomes their inner voice. That's how they're going to talk to themselves when they are going to grow. Or if, for example, they make a mistake and you say, how can you do this? This is such a big blunder. I did not ever expect this from you. I am so disappointed in you. All these lines, they will make children scared of making mistakes. They will either make children very defensive when they make a mistake, and then again, they will not be able to face the mistake. Mistakes are part of our life.
Yeah.
They help us grow, learn. So when children make mistakes, please don't use such lines. Um, just let them see how it is a process to learn. That it's okay. You did this. You messed up. You messed up big time. I know it. But that's how we learn, beta. Important is what we do now.
Mhm.
So I think we are very hard on ourselves because our parents were pretty hard on us.
That's true.
Another thing that I will say is, I will really, really suggest, don't give silent treatments to children, please. That really makes them a people pleaser. That makes them again hard on themselves. I think I was given a lot of silent treatment, and my mom is a very conscious person today, and she was always work in progress and everything. So I'm very attached to him, but I still feel somewhere I'm very hard on myself because of those silent treatments, in the sense whenever I would make a mistake, I would just feel, how could I do this?
Mm.
Like I think I will give a silent treatment to myself only, somewhere inside, in a very weird way. Let's just let children know that we unconditionally are there for them and we love them no matter what.
Right.
Very cliche to say, but point is that, do children know that even if I make a mistake, I'm a good child?
Mm.
And you don't need to say that. They
Mm.
can see that.
Yes.
You don't need to say you're a good child even if you make a mistake. That's not enough. When they make a mistake, how are you?
Exactly.
Do you still say, I still love you? I always do. So even if my son makes the biggest blunder, he's 8, he's going to make so many mistakes. He's going to even disrespect someone really badly, and it will really trigger me, because disrespecting, oh my God, as a child, I have been taught not to be
Yes.
disrespectful. So when he is disrespectful, it can really trigger me. But the point is, do I still say, hey, we don't talk like this? And I still believe in his inner goodness. So I say, I know you're a very good person, Bacha. I think you were really upset and we still don't talk like this. Even when we are upset, we can work on that. So I still love you. Even when you talk like this, I love you, but I love you too much to not correct you, beta.
Right.
I have to help you. You need my help. So we are not going to talk. And if you do still talk like this, then I'll have to withdraw. Then, for example, if he talks like this with my help will not play with you.
Mm.
Because you have to respect someone if you want them to play with you, beta. That's what I'm teaching him.
Yeah. So, when you spoke about silent treatment, it is so true. The silence that we got as children from our parents for what we did wrong kind of makes us feel so awkward around silence when we grow up. We just can't handle silence. When there is silence, we want to break that silence because it makes us so uncomfortable. It reminds us of our childhood when we were given the silent treatment. It's crazy how it still works. I mean, I'm thinking about how my mother used to give me silent treatments. And sometimes when I'm not very conscious, I get very uncomfortable around silence. I'm like, okay, my body is just not very comfortable around silence. Now I understand where it is coming
And then
from.
we'll try and speak something, say something
Yes.
to just break
For the
that
sake
silence.
of it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's so true.
I have been there
So,
myself.
what do you think is one uncomfortable truth every parent needs to hear?
That the way you are affects your child.
Mm.
Parent coaches, why is it so popular today?
Mm.
Why has it come in this world? It's because parents affect children. So imagine if a parent of an 8-year-old comes to me and they want to talk about the child, and then they say that, should I get my child? And I say, no, please, you have to come. And they say, you will not even meet my child? And you will help my child? It's because just talking to the parent and helping the parent will help the child.
Mm.
Parents have so much influence over their children. So if there's something that your child, maybe like aggression, tantrums, losing confidence, not speaking enough in the class, not performing, whatever is happening, somewhere it's coming down to how you are talking with the child also. So it may be hard because sometimes when parents come to me, as I said in the beginning, that they are more concerned about what the child is doing and not what they are doing. And that's the uncomfortable journey that I have to take them through, sessions where they have to see what they are doing, because their behavior towards children and around them is affecting the child.
Mm. Wow. Okay. And I'm a single child, and my husband is also a single child. So we generally don't understand how it is to grow up with a sibling. While there are so many amazing things that one can have to grow up with a sibling, there is also a level of insecurity that the older child feels when the younger one is born. How do parents deal with this?
It is by remembering and understanding and recognizing this, that this may happen.
Mm.
See, there are two things. One is what you can do as a parent, and second, the journey that the first child is going through. So when you became a parent, you went through a lot of changes. This is similarly when your elder one is going to become a sibling now, an elder one, he is going to go through a growth spurt, a growth period, a period of learning to be resilient, a period to remember, understand that I am not the center of the attention, of everyone's attention, that there will be times that I will not be that. Going through that period is going to be uncomfortable, right? But out of it, but when the child will come out of it, your child will seem more mature,
Mm.
is what I believe. I also have a
Yes.
1.5-year-old. It was very uncomfortable, Gayatri. For me, both of us, we went through a big growth spurt.
Okay.
Both of us, we learned a lot. We became more resilient. So I will say you can't completely do away with that.
Mm.
That your firstborn will be perfect if you do everything right. Your firstborn will not have to face any challenges. I don't think it's even good. Children need to face challenges, right, to grow. But what you can do is not make it a very big trauma for the child.
Mm.
And how you can avoid that is by preparing the child, by letting the child know how will things be, that this is how the baby will come, the baby will cry, the baby will poop, I'll be feeding the baby will be sleeping with mama, you will be sleeping here or you'll be sleeping with mama, or whatever, mama will be going to the hospital. So the first part is, if the child is not at all prepared that you will be like away from them for 3-4 days, then it becomes more traumatic for the child. But if the child knows, so I told my son so many times, so he knew that when he would even come to the hospital the second day, he would say, now tomorrow is the third day, mama, that means you will be coming on the fourth day. And he knew what to expect. It was not easy. I could see he's struggling staying without me. He would be emotional, I would be emotional, but then we were still connected in that way. And also remembering that you will be losing a lot of patience
Mm.
that you were not losing before.
Mm.
So it's very important for you to keep yourself in check. around your child, because it's not that the child has got another sibling. The child has also got a parent who's become dysregulated with him.
Mm.
Now the child is, if you're going to get angry at places where you were patient before, now the child will feel, okay, now I'm not loved,
Okay.
because now the parent has attitude has changed towards me. So being very careful of being more regulated and patient with your child. I know it's hard. I know, I've been there. It's very hard. But then apologizing.
Okay.
So we have to be very careful how we are with our elder ones in that way. Connect with them emotionally, be honest with them, and regulate yourself as much as possible, and you will sail through it and you'll grow through it.
That's beautiful. Ishna, coming to the end of the podcast, my question for you is, what is your message for parents out there who are beating themselves up and are being really hard on themselves so that they can just be good parents? What is your message for them?
Who are good parents? What is the definition of a good parent? Is there any? We all have our own. If you feed the child well, you're a good parent. If your child studies well, you're a good parent. If you're calm, then you're a good parent. What is a good parent? I feel a good parent is a real parent. Be real with your children. Have a real relationship. What is a real relationship? That when you try to be calm, you are conscious enough, you understand yourself, you're not blaming your child completely for their behavior. You keep seeing that, how is my behavior affecting the child? How are the things? So you're going under your child's behavior instead of completely blaming again. The second thing is, you're going under your own behavior. So when we are talking about empathizing with the child, making the child seen, love the child unconditionally, are you doing that to yourself? So to be I will say a good parent is a parent who will be kind to himself or herself, because when you are that, then you're kind to your children. And when you're hard on yourself, vice versa, you are hard on your children as well. So be kind. You lose it, it's okay. You made a mistake, it's okay. We are learning. So that's what I'll say. Take it as a journey. Take it as nothing. Take it as impermanence. Nothing is permanent. We are just sailing through every stage with our children. Our children are growing. We are growing with them. See it like that, and you'll be amazing parents.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. I mean, we don't come with manuals, right? I mean, we are also growing as our children grow. We've become a mother, we've become a father, we're growing with them. And that's so beautifully said, just be real. And that's more than enough than to be a good parent in itself. Ishina, this was such a beautiful conversation about parenting. I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but then there's so many insights for me. I'm sure for all the viewers who are already parents, who are wanting to become parents, this is going to open their mind to a lot of things. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lovely conversation, and you're very warm, Gayatri. Thank you so much.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. Thank you once again.